Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome into this edition of, wait for it, Hottie Toddy Talk with me and Nick. That is going to be the official new name of the show coming at you. It's going to cover not just baseball. We plan to be around for all the sports, at least the big three at the very minimum: baseball, basketball, football, if we can. Try to stay as consistent as possible. We're going to have some graphics. We're going to have some intros. We're going to have all kinds of stuff coming at you. So you guys just stay tuned. This show's about to get a whole lot better than it already is, and we definitely look forward to that. So shout out to Evie and Bo and all the people responsible for that. But without further ado, it's time to get into what you guys came here for, and that's talk some Ole Miss baseball right here on the Rebel Walk. Well, first of all, make sure you head over to the Rebel Walks YouTube channel, subscribe, hit that bell, make sure you get notified anytime we have a video coming your way. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers over at the Rebel Walks channel. We're trying to get there and a whole lot more. So help us out with that. Head over to the Rebel Walk on YouTube and check us out. You're going to see all the videos, not only of us, but you're going to see post-game press conferences from all the coaches. You're going to see post-game video that we get at baseball games and things like that. So you're not going to want to miss out. Go head over to the YouTube channel at the Rebel Walk and check that out. Well, Nick, without further ado, let's dive into it. There is not a whole lot of great things to say so far about the baseball season. Let's just be honest. We already talked about Hawaii. Obviously, we've been there, done that. And, of course, Mike Bianco, in his post-game comments after that series, said that in his 24 years, he's never seen baseball played that poorly in all three phases. And he actually told his wife that despite being in Hawaii, he'd never been happier to be home and make it back to Swayze Field. Well, Arkansas State decided to come in and play a little spoiler for that home opener. And for the first time since Louisville in 2020, Ole Miss lost a home opener, this time to Arkansas State 4-2. And, Nick, the story remained the same for that entire game. The Bats just never woke up.
Yeah, like you said, I think it kind of just, boiled over from the weekend where we couldn't get the Bats going. And albeit, Arkansas State did score 4 runs. Obviously, the point of the game is to score more than the other. But I don't think we could have asked, our pitching staff to hold them to 1 run. At some point, the Bats do have to get going. And, we won't get too far into it. But, Iowa's coming up, and Iowa's a good club, and they got some good players on their team. So, yeah, I think this weekend is huge to get, a good confidence boost. But like we said, at this point, you can't take anyone lightly just because of how poorly we have, been executing and playing. So at this point, you have to be locked in on whoever's coming to the stadium that day.
Yeah, and we'll, of course, get into Iowa next week when we get into that. But Sam Peterson is going to be the name to watch there. We'll definitely get into him when that time comes. But you're 100% right. Some much better teams coming up. Iowa is a very good team. Their offense has been electric so far. But the thing about it is, Nick, what we saw and what we knew coming into this season is that the pitching staff was going to be a question mark. That was supposed to be the question mark for Ole Miss coming into the year. And it has been to an extent, but the bullpen has been surprisingly good for Ole Miss. If you look at those top 3-4 names in the bullpen, Mason Nichols has been phenomenal. Braden Jones has been great so far in his work as well. And honestly, if you look at Wes Mendez, even though he didn't have a great outing against Arkansas State, he hasn't been bad either. Mason Morris hasn't been bad. The guys have been doing their job out of the bullpen, at least all you can expect them to do. That said, no one could have foreseen how poorly they would have performed offensively. That is what has just shocked everyone. If you look at Hawaii, they went 9 for 62 with runners on base. That is just insanely bad. And then they left 7 more on against Arkansas State.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail right on the head. It's, it's leaving those runners on base. Of course, some good offenses will leave a lot of runners on base. That's because they're getting so many people on base. And with how we're hitting the ball right now, you can't afford to leave, 5-6 runners on base in a 2-run game. It ended up being, that ends up being the difference. And, I thought coming into this season, I think you and I talked about, you have all these transfers coming in, what they've done previously, but you've never seen them play together in an Ole Miss uniform. And for me, that was kind of, a little bit of a, there aren't too many players that have 2 players that played starters last year. So, it's a lot of new guys, and I figured it might be a struggle early on, but I couldn't tell you that it would have been, a 2-3 after 5 games with Hawaii and Arkansas State.
Yeah, definitely not the start you were looking for. Mike
Right.
said it after the game on Wednesday. The way you score runs is by consistently getting a bunch of at-bats strung together, good
Right.
at-bats strung together. They just haven't had that. There were some positive signs. Trayson Hughes finally getting his first extra base hit. He showed off that good swing a little bit. Judd Udemark finally getting a home run.
Right.
So he got the first beer showers of the year at Swayze Field. Ethan Leger hit a couple of rockets that were just robbed by Austin Jaslov, who was phenomenal over at third base for Arkansas State. And he's technically their shortstop. He's a shortstop by trade. Was playing third base last night and was phenomenal there. And, of course, he hit the solo home run for Arkansas State early in the game to make it 2-0. And he was a vacuum over there in the infield. Their infield was really good. This is not your grandpa Arkansas State team, as they say. They had not won a game in Oxford since 2008. But that being said, this is a very much revamped Arkansas State team. Now, again, people are going to say I'm spinning it to be as positive as possible, whatever. The fact is that's a good Arkansas State team. They're going to be a good Sun Belt Conference team this year. Certainly not a team you should lose to at home if you're old. Right. If you look at it on paper. But on paper, right now, Arkansas State has a better hitters.
Yeah, and I agree with you said. Arkansas State, it's not the Arkansas State of old, although, we never really saw them a lot, once or twice a year. But I think they're going to be, in the hunt in the Sun Belt. From what I saw, it looked like they're a pretty well-rounded baseball team. So, like you said, not someone you should lose to, but you can't take anything away from Arkansas State because, like they said, like the coaches always say, you got to give them the credit for beating us instead of, beating ourselves up saying, hey, it was everything that we did wrong. You weren't playing a T-ball team. You're playing another Division I college baseball team over there.
Yeah, and the fact is, bad games are going to happen. I would rather the bad games happen early in the season.
Yeah.
So let's get that out of the way now, and come together. 20 new players on the roster. Most of the offense are transfers. Most of these guys have never played together before. The one thing I would like to see is them to loosen up. They are playing so tight. They look like sometimes they honestly look like they're not having any fun out there. And we remember from the 2022 team, even though it looked like they wouldn't even make the postseason, and they certainly weren't having any fun at the end of the year when they lost to Vanderbilt in the first round of the SEC tournament, and things weren't looking good there. But that team was so much fun. You look at Elko and Chatinier and Bench and Graham and all those guys, they had so much fun together. They played so loose, and that was a big key to that team. We need to see a lot looser play out of this team, and that could do volumes, honestly.
Yeah. And like they say, it's a kid's game. Baseball is a kid's game. So, why not play it like a kid, have some fun with it. And, like you said, it just the attitude can, do volumes, I think, for the Ole Miss baseball team.
Yeah, and it would certainly remedy some of these errors we're seeing on the infield in particular when they're playing kind of tight and not turning smooth double plays, not kind of getting those infield plays that you would normally see them get that we're used to seeing Ole Miss get. From there, you just kind of hope to get the bats woken up. And this weekend provides a great opportunity to do that. Before we get into that, though, I want to tell you about our great sponsors, 2 of our great sponsors that are on board with us this year. We'll start with our friends over at Dead Soxy. You guys know Dead Soxy by now. They are just phenomenal. Go to deadsoxy.com. Use the code RebelWalk all the time. Doesn't matter what Ole Miss does on the field, on the diamond. Doesn't matter. You don't have to win. They don't have to lose. You use the code RebelWalk and you get 25% off site-wide, period. Just make sure you enter that code at checkout, and you will be taken care of at deadsoxy.com. Be sure to check out their exclusive Ole Miss NIL collection and help out not only yourself by getting some great, good-looking socks, but also help out Ole Miss athletes in the university athletic programs. DeadSoxy.com. And then if you're in the market for some Ole Miss attire and maybe you don't want to go pay full price somewhere, head over to Rebel Closet. You can not only buy some consigned clothes at Rebel Closet, you can consign your clothes. You don't need them anymore. Maybe they're too small. Maybe you just don't want to wear them anymore, but they're still in good enough shape for somebody else to wear. Head over to Rebel Closet. They will buy your clothes off of you. Well, basically, you'll go drop them off. They'll decide what they want. You'll go back and pick up what they didn't want, and you'll get paid while you're there for what they did want. And while you're there, you might as well shop the inventory. So check out Rebel Closet over on Jackson Avenue and give them a shout and see if you can't get yourself some Ole Miss attire. Maybe not break the bank while you're doing it. Rebel Closet, glad to have them on board. Check out on Instagram at rebelcloset_OX. All right, Nick. So coming into the weekend, Ole Miss is 2-3, and they are welcoming a 1-4 High Point University Panthers team to town this year. Now, most of us don't know much about High Point. Let's be real. About the only thing I knew about High Point is that it's Tubby Smith's alma mater, and that he coached there before he retired in college basketball after he coached at the University of Memphis for a little while. And I actually had the privilege of meeting Tubby at Rhodes College one day. Great guy. But as far as High Point is concerned, they have 3 losses to UMass Lowell. Don't ask me anything about them other than they're in Massachusetts, and they are some kind of offshoot of the University of Massachusetts. And they also have a loss in the midweek to Appalachian State. Now, Appalachian State we know to be a pretty decent baseball team every year, and they have one of the most beautiful settings in all of college baseball as well. If you don't know what Appalachian State's baseball field looks like, be sure to go Google it. It's gorgeous. But their pitching staff provides Ole Miss the opportunity that they need. They need a chance to get the bats going, and this High Point staff is going to provide that opportunity. High Point staff as a whole right now has just not been super great. Their ERA as a team is 5.94, but 3 of their main 4 starters, when I say main 4, I mean 3 of their starters from over the weekend leading into the midweek, have ERAs of 7.20, 7.20, and 5.40. All 3 of those are with 5 innings going. So if you're Ole Miss, you have a real chance here to finally do what you've been wanting to do all season long. That's get those bats woken up.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, it's High Point. Yep, they've got, again, Division I baseball players, but it's a lesser competition. And like you said, it's a time to get the bats going. I'm sure Mike Bianco, players, everyone, within the program should not be sitting well with how the season is going. And I think it is a good opportunity, like you said, wake the bats up and, start seeing a Ole Miss offense that we're used to seeing, in years past, you're used to normally always an Ole Miss team that's going to be one of the better hitting teams in the SEC. So that's something, that I think obviously anyone would like to get to, but I think it's got to start this weekend.
It absolutely does. I mean, if you're Ole Miss, you have to have this series. Yeah. And next week, you look at Ole Miss, we'll get into it a little bit later. They have a very long week next week. We'll go over that towards the end of the show. You've got to have this series. It's a must win. So you simply cannot lose games to High Point. You just cannot. If you're Ole Miss, and you definitely cannot lose games to High Point at home. That being said, High Point does have what has killed Ole Miss so far this season, and that is some strong hitters, some strong contact hitters. Again, we keep saying it. Well, it's not the same level of competition. Well, so far that hasn't mattered. Ole Miss has been getting clobbered by quote unquote lesser competition, and this is still some Division I players. And if you look at that roster, Cale Chatham is going to be the main guy. He's hitting .429 through 5 games in 14 at bats. He has yet to strike out. He's walked 9 times. He has a home run. He's got a couple of doubles. He's got 6 hits, 5 runs scored, 11 total bases. He's slugging .786. This kid is not a joke. He's not a slouch. He's also made an appearance on the mound for High Point in a blowout game and got a strikeout while he was out there. So he's a jack of all trades. So you look at Chatham, he's going to be a guy that you've got to keep at bay if you're Ole Miss. And then you look at a couple other guys on there. Sam Schnurr's kind of their power guy, a couple of home runs for him with a slugging of .737. And then Connie Derschlag is their speed guy, 3 for 4 on stolen bases so far as well. They get on base a lot. That's kind of the key. That's kind of what has killed Ole Miss. It killed them against Hawaii in the last 2 games, and it killed them against Arkansas State. They gave up a lot of base runners, and the other teams were doing what Ole Miss couldn't, and that's bringing those base runners in.
Yeah, I think one thing that you said that kind of has stood out to me looking over High Point's, stats and roster, they've got 7 home runs in the season, 7 in 5 games. So, that's not awful. And then they steal bases, 7 for 8 and still stolen bases. And the guys that don't have the higher average, they're producing. They're the guys that are the RBI guys. So they're from what I've seen on paper, they look like a well-rounded team.
Yeah, they're going to be well coached. They're going to be one
Mhm.
of these small ball style teams. I'm sure they're going to try to get up, station to station baseball. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try to kill Ole Miss with base runner after base runner, singles, doubles, walks, bunts. The
Mhm.
bunts have been getting Ole Miss all season long so far. In all 5 games, we've seen a lot of bunts
Right.
against Ole Miss, and they've struggled to field them. They've struggled to really kind of handle those so far. So we're going to see a lot of that, most likely with a team like High Point as well. They're going to try to do whatever it takes
Right.
to come into an SEC stadium against an SEC team on their home opening weekend and surprise everybody. They know Ole Miss is struggling, and they're going to try to take advantage of it. Ole Miss, meanwhile, has, as a team, batting just 181. And
Yeah.
in 120 at bats, 160 at bats, I apologize, 29 hits. 29 for 160 at the plate. That's a number that you're just appalled when you hear when it comes to Ole Miss baseball.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, we're used to a team that hits, so kind of, having a team that's not hitting kind of is sending a lot of us to close to pressing that panic button, which it's still too early to do, but it's just something we're not used to seeing. And like you said, it's alarming for sure to have an Ole Miss team that isn't hitting.
Yeah, and the other thing that we're not doing is trying to steal bases. We just talked about High
Right.
Point stealing bases. We're just 2 for 3 on stolen base attempts this year. We've given up 8. We're 8 for 8. Certainly missing Hayden Dunhurst's arm behind the plate for
Right.
sure. But you got a true freshman in Smithwick
Right.
starting most of the games, so you don't expect him to be super well rounded right off the bat. It'll certainly be nice
Right.
when he kind of figures that out and gets that catcher role really figured out, both behind the plate and at the plate, especially.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, you'd like to see Ole Miss maybe try to change it up a little bit, try to figure out how to wreak some havoc. They haven't really been doing much outside the box this year so far. And I get you've got a
Right.
big you get a big new team and you don't necessarily want to throw them to the wolves. But if you're Coach Bianco right now, you just got to try something. You got to wake this team up a little bit. You got to kind of do what Chris Beard tried to do last night and take that technical foul to try to wake the team up a little bit. You got to do something to try to shake things up and get this team going, because so far nothing's working.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's been something that I don't want to say Bianco hasn't been that guy, but, different times call for different measures. So I think, like you said, whether it's switching the lineup up, pulling a guy off the bench, and, plugging him in like we've seen him do with Garrett Wood before, and just kind of shake something up, something different. Although it's kind of hard to do something different this early in the season, as it wouldn't be different because we hadn't got used to anything yet. But like you said, yeah, steal a base here or there, lay down a bunt here or there when you can, just something different, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, you got to try something, and this is going to be a great weekend to do it. This is the High Point team that went 20-34 last year. They're 1-4 this year. This is not a good team. Let's just be real. I mean, we're not taking shots at them. They do have some good players that you're going to have to watch, but this is not a great baseball team coming into Oxford this weekend. You're not going to find out a lot about the team unless it goes the wrong way. If Ole Miss blows out High Point in all 3 games, okay, they were supposed to. You still really don't know much about them. But in one sense, it's kind of like basketball. Sometimes you just got to see one go in. You just got to see a shot go in. And for Ole Miss hitting, they just need to see some hits get strung together. And if they can start figuring out, okay, here's our pitches, here's what we need to wait on, then you start stringing that stuff together before you get into a much bigger week next week. Right. Now you've kind of got a little momentum going. But you've got to start somewhere, and this is the weekend to do it. If you don't start here, that's when concern really starts to set in.
Yeah, and I thought last night when Udermark hit that home run, I thought maybe it would have been something because, that makes it a 2-run game. And I think, was there 2 outs in the 8th? 2 outs, 1 out, 2 outs. And by the way, that was a great pitch he hit out. That was a pitcher's pitch, and he got that one out. And I thought maybe that could have been the start of something. But like you said, yeah, all it takes is one. Kind of like, Luke Hill leads off Friday night with a double over the right fielder's head. And that's really all it takes is, like you said, see one go in and kind of, hitting's contagious. You string a few together and the next guy, then the next guy. Where we see last night, I think didn't watch the whole game, but, I think there was a bases loaded, double play, and that's a killer. Bases loaded double play is a killer. So, it's baseball. Those things happen. But, like you said, I think we just got to build some confidence. Hitting's contagious. So I think once we get going, it's going to be fine. But we just haven't been able to get going yet.
Yeah, just haven't been able to, and you want to really start seeing some patience. That's the key. You've
Yeah,
got to start seeing some patience, and these guys, you got to stop swinging at everything. Just stop swinging
yeah,
at everything up there. Some of these pitchers have not been able to buy a strike, and we're bailing them out by
yeah,
swinging at some bad pitches. And then last night, you had a lot of bad luck. I mean, you saw 2 rockets by Leger that would have been, an absolute, at least RBI, 1 RBI had they gotten through. And then Ethan Groff hit a rocket into the outfield that just hung up there on a line drive late in the game. So you do have some bad luck from time to
right,
time, but overall, the story of the season so far has been we're not putting hits together, like Mike said. We're not stringing the hits together. We're not getting consistently good at bats. And that's what you have to have, particularly in the SEC. You've got to have good at bats, and they've got to be consistently good at bats. Because if you don't put good at bats together, SEC pitching is going to eat you alive. And this is the weekend to start focusing on at bats if you're Ole Miss.
yeah. I think you said it best. They got to be more patient, and that's one of the harder things to do in sports. Is as a hitter, if something isn't going right for you, one of the harder things to do is be patient. You're looking for that next hit, you're looking for that next ball in the gap. So, like you said, and I think it's hard to, and it's one thing that coaches obviously don't want to do, to tell a team, hey, this is High Point coming in, let that you don't want to tell them they're not good, but you can tell them, hey, go up there, lick your chops a little bit and try and get one, but be patient at the same time, which is hard to do. But I think, and I'll say it again, it's just a really good opportunity. You've said it. It's a really good opportunity to get something going before we kind of, the schedule ramps up here soon. And then, like you mentioned, next week there's 2 midweek games. That's going to eat at some pitching. So it's as good as time as ever. There's no better time than now. So I think it's got to happen now, like you said.
And we'll get into that because we have 5 very winnable games coming up for Ole Miss to get back on track. But before we get into that, we will talk about our other 2 wonderful sponsors that are on board with us this year, Phoenix Embroidery Company, Brown Insurance Agency. We're so glad to have both of them on board this year. If you need your screen printing or embroidery needs done, go check out Phoenix Embroidery Company. Hit up John Eakes. He's going to take really good care of you, and he's going to put a lot of pride in what he does, and that's key. It's very cliche for someone to say, yeah, I strive for perfection. That's what John says, and that's what he means when he says it. Go check out Phoenix Embroidery Company. They're going to hook you up with some of the best screen printing or embroidery work you'll ever see. You're going to see the pride in their logo. That logo is going to look good for whatever you need done. Go check out Phoenix Embroidery Company. And then if you need some insurance needs, whether it be your business, your home, your auto, your life, or your health insurance, no matter what you need, Brown Insurance Agency right there on North Lamar Boulevard in Oxford, browninsurance.biz. They're going to take care of you. They're local. They've been around Oxford. They know the city. They know the people. They're going to take real good care of you. Brown Insurance Agency, check them out for all of your insurance needs. We're glad to have both of them on board with us this year as well. Now, you mentioned it, Nick, a moment ago. We've talked about it a couple times. 5 straight winnable games coming up, but it's going to be a long stretch of baseball for Ole Miss coming up over this next week. You got 3 straight against High Point this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have a day off, and then you welcome Little Rock to town on Tuesday, and then you play Missouri State on Wednesday before you have a 3-game set over the weekend, next weekend, with Iowa, who is a very prolific, very high-powered team. That's not going to be an easy series at all, and we might find out a lot about Ole Miss that weekend. That could be very much a SEC caliber team coming into Oxford next weekend. We're going to talk a lot more about that, obviously, next week. But you're going to have 2 off days next week. That's it, Monday and Thursday. Every other day next week, you're playing baseball. And it's not going to be an easy week. It's not going to be an easy weekend this weekend, knowing you've got those games coming up next week. If you're Ole Miss, your pitching has to be on point for these next 5 games because you're going to need as much of it as you can get when Iowa comes to town next weekend. I think for the next 5 games, we could talk about the hitting all day long because it's not been great. But pitchers eating innings this next 5 games is going to be the key.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, that two midweek games, that's something you normally don't see. You normally see the Tuesday or the Wednesday, but having 2 in a row, thankfully they're at home, so you don't have to travel. But I think it's really important. Even this weekend, if you can have some guys eat some innings, obviously you'd rather them do well than not do well. But if we have some guys that start struggling and we've got to use more bullets out the chamber, as they say. It could get hairy into next weekend against Iowa. So obviously, don't want to look too far ahead, but this stuff, it can have a little ripple effect if we don't pitch well enough.
Well, and so far the pitching has been kind of the bright spot, particularly Mason Nichols. That what a performance he's had so far. 5.1 innings so far that he's gone. No runs, just one hit, 6 strikeouts, 0.00 ERA over 15 at bats. Mason's been quite a story this year. We're going to need a lot more of that. And Ole Miss bullpen is really going to need to show up. But we're definitely going to need the starters to get through some innings. I mean, that's the thing. We really need them to get through innings this weekend, and we're definitely going to need whoever the weekday starters are to kind of try to eat a few innings over Tuesday and Wednesday as well, because Ole Miss is going to need as fresh of a staff as they can get. But at the end of the day, you can't go 53-3 unless you go 2-3 to start the season.
There you go. That's it. Yep.
Well, before we get around the SEC real quick, because Ole Miss is not the only team struggling in the SEC so far, so it's not all clouds for Ole Miss. Got one thing I want to throw up on the screen real quick. You may have seen this making the rounds so earlier today, but check it out. This was making the rounds on social media earlier today. It is a statue of a certain former first baseman that played for Ole Miss by the name of Tim Elko. You may have heard of him. He was kind of decent when he played for Ole Miss.
He was all right.
Somewhat popular, just a little bit. Yeah. Not sure where this was. This is not my photo. But how crazy is that we're already seeing this Tim Elko statue? I'm certainly, I have heard nothing to say that photo is fake. As far as I know, it's completely real. And that was seen by someone earlier today. Pretty crazy to think that we're about to have a Tim Elko statue somewhere out in front of Swayze Field.
Yeah, I agree. It's crazy, but at the same time, it's a guy that deserves it. Ole Miss fans will remember Tim Elko forever. He's part of that College World Series run that, a lot of people said at a certain point in the season, hey, they're done. They're not going to make the tournament. And they let us in, and they let the Rebs get hot.
They let the Rebs get hot. That will forever be the phrase of that will be as well known in Ole Miss baseball as anything else. There will never be another first national championship for Ole Miss. There will never be another 2022 team. I am so glad that I was able to make the trip to Omaha, and you were able to make the trip to Omaha as well. I would have kicked myself forever if I had not gone out there. That's for sure. But my curse is broken. I thought for the longest time that I was a curse because it never failed. If I went to a game, almost we lost. But I broke that. It's definitely not me. I figured it's definitely not me. I was there.
Somebody else.
The national championship. Yeah. It's definitely not me. So it can't be that. And on that note, it is time to go briefly around the SEC. And, as far as Mississippi is concerned, things have not started off super great. If you remember, the coaches picked both Ole Miss and Mississippi State at the beginning of the year to finish 6 and 7 in the SEC West, respectively. Well, they may have been onto something if you look at it so far, as Mississippi State was swept by Austin Peay on Tuesday and Wednesday. They did win their weekend series to open over Air Force, but then lost 2 straight to the Governors from Austin Peay. Not what the Bulldogs were looking for to start the season either. And when you look at Chris Lamonis, he was already kind of on a hot seat coming into the year. Yeah. He might not be off of it just yet after that. And people, of course, on social media, things go crazy off the bat. They're already calling for his head. But not a great start for the 2 Mississippi baseball programs, at least in the SEC.
Right.
And then, of course, if you look around the rest of the SEC, things going pretty well for everybody else, other than Vanderbilt, who's also struggled a little bit. They're 3-2 with a couple of losses that surprised folks. But other than that, everything else going to kind of according to plan. South Carolina, Georgia, and Kentucky are all undefeated over in the East, 5-0, 4-0, 4-0. Tennessee is 4-1. They did lose a game to Oklahoma on opening weekend, but that's a pretty good loss. We, of course, remember Oklahoma well.
Yeah.
Had a couple of wins against them.
I remember losing to them, though.
And the SEC West, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, and A&M are all undefeated. Arkansas sitting at 3-1. Florida and Missouri each had some games canceled. They are both only 2-1 over in the SEC East. But the only 2 programs in the conference with a losing record so far are the 2 in the SEC West that are here in Mississippi, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, certainly looking to turn that around. But a lot of work to do if you're the Rebels, but a lot of baseball season left. And that's what you got to keep reminding yourself. There's a lot of season left.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's easy as fans to look at it and, throw in the towel, but it's still early, new team. Obviously, you'd like it to be going better, but it's not. Kind of got to take it for what it is, and just realize that it's still early. And Ole Miss and I said it last show, I believe. A lot of people threw in the towel on that 2022 team, and look what they did. They ended up winning a national title. So worse things have happened. So I think it's going to be all right.
Yeah, well, we're going to find out together. We got a long ways to go, but all 3 games this weekend will be streamed on the SEC Network Plus, so you will be able to tune in that way. Game 1 on Friday will go at 4 o'clock. Game 2 on Saturday will go at 5 o'clock, and then Game 3, the finale on Sunday, will go at 1:30. All those times, of course, local Central Time, and they will be on the SEC Network. Plus, of course, you can catch all the action on the Ole Miss Radio Network as well if you're unable to stream the game. And, of course, stay tuned right here to the Rebel Walk. We'll have all the updates for you as we always do. Nick is at Nick Filipich 11 on Twitter. I am at Austin on Air 1021. Of course, the Rebel Walk is at the Rebel Walk. Boy, we've got a great team of folks working for the Rebel Walk right now. We've got a lot of great content still to come for you as well. And hopefully we've got a lot of great baseball coming our way. If you will, maybe we'll see a high point this weekend. We haven't seen one yet this year. That was my bad dad joke of the evening for all of you right there. Nick, great having you on again, man. It's so good to be doing these shows. Looking forward to keeping this up throughout the season. And hopefully we'll have a weekend series sweep to talk about on Monday.
Yeah, let's hope. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Until then, everybody, you have a wonderful evening, and we were going to have a lot more to this show coming very soon, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be an all-new look. It's going to be even better, and we're hoping it's going to be even better for all of you. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.